Hi, welcome to the BIPOC Manager Podcast, a weekly podcast where we discuss issues faced by minority professionals in North America. I'm your host, Khalil Gulivala. In today's episode, we're going to discuss one of the most challenging aspects of any workplace environment, which are the unwritten rules. Now, what are the unwritten rules? Unwritten rules like who do you CC? What's the best way to talk to a colleague? What's the best way to get a project moving forward? How do you connect with colleagues around lunchtime conversation? And these are issues I faced. I remember being in my first job and feeling this need to kind of show up in a tie every day, which I did for about the first 2 years when no one around me wore a tie. Because when I was growing up, everybody showed up to work with a tie. Now, what I realized, what I learned later on was that actually put some of my colleagues at unease talking to me because they were just unsure why I wore a tie when I was following my own sort of background. That's one thing that made me interested in understanding what those unwritten rules were. And one of the ways to think about unwritten rules, it's sort of like watching a sports game. You're watching the game go on, but you might not be aware of what the rules are. You're trying to reverse engineer what the rules are. Now, sometimes you're gonna be on sometimes you're gonna be on the dot, sometimes you're not. And so part of it is what are ways you can accelerate the process to know what those rules are. And I think what really helped me was that process of observation, just observing. And the three sort of main things that I would suggest people to observe. And the three kind of main things are body language, communication styles, and decision-making process. When it comes to body language, and body language is actually the medium in which most of our communication takes place. It's actually not verbal, it's mostly through body language, to our corporal beings. And the thing about this as well is body language differs from culture to culture and group to group. So it's really attention when you're in a new place, if you're an immigrant or minority professional, is pay attention to how colleagues use body language during meetings and casual interactions, right? Notice their postures, the facial expressions, gestures. Do people lean in when someone speaks, do they cross their arms? And why that's important is because you're learning ways of sort of how people are communicating to each other in this environment. Look for communication styles. You got to listen closely to how your colleagues communicate. Are they formal or are they informal? Do they prefer to being direct about something or the more roundabout about their ideas? And why this is important is because on one hand is to understand culturally what's going on, but also in that specific work environment, how are people dealing with each other? And lastly, and one of the crucial things is the decision-making process. How are people making decisions within that team or department? Who gets to speak in meetings? Is there a hierarchy when it comes to making a decision that needs to be observed, or are people more flat across the organization? Watch out if ideas are accepted or rejected. And why this matters is because understanding how decisions are made enable you to be able to promote your programs, promote projects you're working on, and just making sure that you're doing as much as you can to put the odds in your favor. So, when it comes to kind of understanding what those unwritten rules are, it's super key for minority professionals, for immigrants, to really use the powers of observation. Keep a sharp eye out on kind of how people interacting with each other when it comes to their body language, their vocabulary, what kind of communication style they're using. Are they more formal? Are they more indirect? But also decision-making process. How are decisions being made in their organization? If you do all this, I'm sure the rules are going to go from being unwritten to written, one where you're able to understand it much more better. I'm your host, Khalil Goliwala. Thank you for listening in. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone you know, and please subscribe to the BIPOC Manager Podcast.